All right, we'll get rolling here. My name's Jeffrey Schabschlager. I'm with CMG. My background, Andres touched on it, I think, yesterday or earlier today, but I headed up emerging platforms for Best Buy for a number of years. The last 4 or 5 years, I've had my own business that I was the founder and CEO of, doing helping companies monetize their data and municipalities monetize their data. So when Andres said, "Hey, I've got this AI panel," I'm like, "Great!" And then I saw the people that were on it, and I was like, "Greater! This is awesome." So what we're going to do is similar to the last panel: go around, have folks introduce themselves, where they work at, and give an example of how they've been using AI, and then we'll jump into some questions.
So I feel like I was here introducing myself just a few hours ago. I don't know what else I need to say. Sasha Fontaine, director at Siemens and Energy Solutions. So I'll go straight into, and that gives me a little bit more time, so I'll actually give you 2 quick examples of real life AI applications. First one I touched on, transformer, when I was actually at Hydro-Quebec. Expensive transformer, 18 months lead time, lots of constraints around it. Has to be shipped from China. That's all of our manufacturers our vendors were manufacturing it there. So we wanted to do predictive maintenance. This is back in 2005, and that was a real application for it. The difference is that at the time, like I said, we didn't even know where to put the data. A couple of years later, we had a place to put it. We didn't know what to do with it, what algorithms. You take your reliability engineer to look at it. It's great, too much data for an individual to look at. So eventually they went to get a data scientist to help them out with it. Fast forward till last year. Another example is similar. It's, again, asset predictive maintenance, but this time it's for underground equipment. So high resilience, high availability network, but underground in vaults, hard to access, hard to even inspect. So it went from a multi-year project with Hydro-Quebec to something they were able to do in 7 months. And really the way we started off was we brought our data scientists in with a utility. We did what we call a co-creation. It's a workshop where we bring in their industry experts or their specific technology experts. So they're underground network engineers. We bring in our data scientists. We have a facilitator to keep it going. And the big difference was that we already had a telecom backhaul network. We had a place to put it. And then we started using Hadoop. So we didn't have to go and get a data scientist to go and learn, get on the job and learn it. So that's why we were able to turn around so fast. And that's what we're seeing more and more of in different applications, and that's going beyond assets. The other one I think of is DERMS, so Distributed Energy Resource Management System. We talked about microgrids. I see that as falling under DERMS. Solar rooftop, basically anything that's affecting a digital and distributed grid. You need to forecast better, you need better visibility in it, and that's way too fast to be done by a human. And now we're able to do it with these platforms. Basically, the standardization that Arun was talking about, we're starting to get some small steps there that allow us to do this a lot faster. So I'll stop there.
Did we just lose power?
Yeah.
So this is not an Austin Energy facility. This is San Marcos.
Hi, everybody. I'm Tim Fairchild. I'm with SAS. I'm here because I saw Andres at ETS about 3 weeks ago, maybe, or a couple weeks ago, and I'm just so delighted to be part of this. I told him this feels a lot like the very first ETS. There's just such a buzz here. I've been writing notes all day long. I haven't had time to do anything else but be in here because I don't want to miss a single thing, and I've learned so much. So I just am delighted to be here. Thanks for the invitation. I'm also very, very humbled to be on this panel here. When we did our call the other day, I thought, wow, I'm with some really, really bright people here. So I lead 4 different industry practices at SAS: communications, education, energy, and government. And they don't look very connected. But one of the things I'm just so delighted about today is that this is a place where all 4 of those industries connect in a very, very good way. So I rarely get the opportunity to do that. Just a couple things I'll mention. You probably know a little bit about SAS. We've been in the data and analytics business as a company since 1976. Our CEO and founder, Dr. Goodnight, has been in the business since 1966. SAS, the language, preceded SAS, the company, by 10 years, and it was born at NC State. So this is all we've ever done is data and analytics, and it's so exciting to hear people getting excited about artificial intelligence and machine learning. And all I have to say is that other analytic methods needed to hire a press agent a long time ago, like time series forecasting or optimization. They should have hired someone to really market themselves. Just a couple, since this is an infrastructure panel, I'll just give a couple quick examples. You can go up on the SAS website and look at these. We put a lot of effort in the last year or two to uncovering what our customers are doing with AI specifically. And if you look in the area of factories, you can learn about some stuff we've done with Konica Minolta, with cities, Wake County, and how they are valuing property. It's a really interesting AI use case. For transportation, it would be Volvo, and for utilities, we have a number of them, including TEPCO. But I'll mention, I'm excited about one that you'll hear something about soon. It's some work we're doing around the incredibly boring topic of vegetation management. And if there are 2 words that can put the average person to sleep the quickest, it's vegetation management. I was at an analyst conference a couple months ago. It was a SAS analyst conference. 42 industry analysts, 2 of them were energy. The other were banking. All the rest were banking, financial services, health and life sciences, all the other big industries for SAS. 42 industry analysts watched a 3-minute video about a drone flying over power lines using AI to do vegetation management, and they gave it their undivided attention, and I'm just sitting in that room going like this. Next week, we're going to do the very same thing in Croatia with our international analysts, and I can't wait to see that similar reaction from people who, number 1, don't care about energy, number 2, don't even know they should care about vegetation management.
Great.
I'm Scott Hinson. I'm the CTO of Pecan Street. I'm a little bit of a different entity that I represent up here because we're a 501c3 nonprofit based in Austin, Texas. We do a lot of work studying residential energy usage, and this is total energy envelope for the home, electricity, water, and natural gas. We have a group of about 1,200 volunteer participants nationwide where we're monitoring their energy usage, and a smaller number where we're doing the water and natural gas monitoring. But we get very high resolution data out of these homes. We are upgrading most of our data collection systems to 1-second data collection, which means we get 2.2 to 3 billion data points a day. So instead of just monitoring whole home energy usage, we monitor every single circuit, and we do power quality type measurements. So we get voltage, harmonic distortion for current, phase angle, real reactive power at a 1-second interval for every circuit in the home. Our water systems, we actually have retrofit systems that we've developed that fit on top of legacy water meters. They give us a 4-ounce resolution for water. It does not impair normal meter reading operations, the guy walking by and flipping the lid. But instead of getting that once a month read, we know every 4 ounces of water that go into that residential property. And we have similar systems for natural gas. So I have a couple of examples. One is an unsuccessful example of the kind of things that you don't want to do, which is blindly look at data and not really kind of pay attention and say, does that answer make sense? I know that the folks involved with this aren't here. So we turned over a bunch of our water data to a machine learning company a while ago, and they were showing us how good their disaggregation algorithms are now. disaggregation of electricity data for residential property is actually quite difficult because there's many simultaneous users, right? So when we look at our ground truth data, we do this all the time for folks. We say, okay, your disaggregation algorithm says this, but we have ground truth measurements, and it's actually this, and the success is, varies. With the water, we don't actually get ground truth data, but we can pair it up with our electricity data. So if we see water usage and we see that the bathroom lights have been on, you can make a pretty good guess as to what that usage was, right? So this company they go away for about a month and a half. They do a bunch of machine learning on the data. We turned over a couple 100 million data points to them. We kept a bunch of houses in reserve, right? So that they weren't training on the houses that we were going to test them with. And one of the houses that we kept in reserve was my house. And they gave me a report on where I was using my water. It was fascinating because I don't have an irrigation system, but I was irrigating. I also apparently don't flush toilets or take showers. As a family of 4, I can tell you we really do, right? But this is the sort of thing. It was like, you guys, you don't have bathroom usage. Oh, okay. These are the kinds of traps that you got to watch out for with some of this data analysis. You really have to put some eyeballs on at the end to make sure that your answers make sense. A successful example of this, of sort of the data that we've done, is we're actually working with a couple different groups right now to make demand response. We have all of these homes. We use them as field trials. We do this with commercial companies as well. So we've got some commercial companies that are doing some demand response trials where they're going in and they're changing temperature set points on air conditionings and things like that. And instead of doing it the old-fashioned way where you just kind of shut it off and you hope that the people don't get uncomfortable, they're doing it much smarter so that not only are they much less likely to make the resident of that home uncomfortable and notice that they're in a demand response event, but that when they come out of the demand response event, that coming out of it doesn't mean you have many air conditioners or water heaters or whatever it is turning on simultaneously in a way that might also impact the grid in a way that you want to avoid, right? So historically, a lot of times it's, hey, you turn off for 15 minutes, then everybody turns on at the exact same time, which you just shifted your problem 15 minutes, right? In this case, they're much more gradual about how they come out of these events, and we have the data and the ability to validate that.
My name is Alper Üzmezler. I'm the CEO of Anka Labs and also the managing partner of BASSG. We are in the smart building space. We distribute energy analytics software that is utilized by commissioning agents throughout the United States. And we basically use machine learning and statistical algorithms to predict energy usage and apply demand response and change set points on the units. On the Anka Lab side, on machine learning, we are looking into creating TensorFlow-infused PID loops, another term, 3-letter term for you guys, proportional integral deadband. And yeah, we are basically creating a new way of controlling the controls HVAC equipment with machine learning. That's one of our next goals.
I'm Mark Buckner from Oak Ridge National Laboratory. I feel a bit like a fish out of the bowl here, so to speak. I'm not a business. Oak Ridge National Laboratory is the largest and most diverse multi-science lab in the Department of Energy complex. The lab's been around 75 years. I've not been there quite that long, although it kind of feels like it. I've been there 32 years. And I'm on my 11th version of myself. I was sharing earlier, I feel a bit like an intrapreneur, as instead of moving around every 3 or 4 years. I've been able to associate with some really brilliant people at the lab. That's a really cool thing. You can go around and find a world-class expert in just about any field, and so you can learn a lot. One of the things I've been really about all my career is try to pull together what I'll call cross-functional teams to go after real-world problems and to try to pull the science out of the lab and get it in the hands of people that can use it. So it's about impact and outcome and those kind of things. My training is in physics and nuclear engineering and AI, and it's been the last 4 or 5 years that I've been working in the power systems area. I'm not a power systems guy by training. I was working in a field called cognitive radio prior to this, and we were actually doing some really cool machine learning at the edge. We were actually pulling signals out of the noise. We were actually voice printing communication devices for device-to-device authentication. And the goal there is so that we could authenticate the source where information was coming from, and it would potentially enable device-to-device chain of custody, if you will, because as we start talking about sensors and we start talking about data and learning, if you can't trust the source of that data, you can learn the lie really fast. The other thing, my doctoral work was in an area of ill-posed inverse problems. And when we're swarming in a sea of data, it is an ill-posed problem, which means it's overdetermined. So how do you figure out in that sea of needles, which needle is relevant? So it's a tough, tough problem as we start talking about this. And that's why some of the great machine learning algorithms really work well, because they've got lots of data that you're seeing right now with classification algorithms, with deep learning and other things. But what they struggle from is context. And so it's really difficult for us to know what it is that they're really queuing off of, because they don't understand common sense and inference and context. So I think that's the great challenge that we face in the machine learning and AI world, is the context of that. Yes, it's semantic, but it's the other provenance. So two key examples real quick that I'll share. We have the privilege to work with some phenomenal utilities, very, very close with the Electric Power Board of Chattanooga. You heard today, we have the privilege of being so close to them that we're becoming sort of their research arm. So we spend a lot of time working with them, understanding what are their needs, and trying to bring some solutions there. And the cool thing for all of you in the room is that they really want to share that experience with others. So as they learn, their goal is to share the knowledge on how to do that with others, on how to do it well. So we're doing some really neat things with them there. But we've done two things that I'll point to really quickly. We partnered with a Southern company in Georgia Power, and we currently have a live microgrid in a living community of 60 homes. And we're using machine learning in that to do load forecasting and solar forecasting and optimization among the assets in the homes there with the microgrid, to be able to not only island but also continue operation and all the other things. They're really exploring incentivization, because they can't really get behind the meter in their market. So how do you incentivize and meet the needs of your customers in a way that in a cooperative and collaborative sense makes sense? So that's really neat. We're soon to roll out a partnership with Georgia Power, very similar but different, similar 60 homes, but in this case, instead of being centralized solar and energy storage and generation, each individual townhome has their own solar and power wall. Completely different set of technologies that need to be integrated, and how do those collaborate? So that'll be fun. And then last but not least, we did a study on a military base where they were looking at a building. They were looking at barracks, or in this case, it was a dormitory, and they were trying to understand and model the behavior of the folks in the dorms, as well as modeling every entity and component in the building as though it was a multi-agent, multi-team system. And so they came up with a live simulation based on observing. And the cool thing is that we're able to layer policies based on different contexts and come up with some ideas for facilitation and coordination of the HVAC system and the other things that we never would have thought of before as a proposed proposition, and running it kind of in shadow mode and then looking at the controls piece. So anyway, I'm just glad to be here with all you wonderful people.
Thank you. So AI is a big topic. Anyone who's been listening to the different speakers between last night and the different panels today, there's been a lot of data talk, a lot of AI talk. I don't think we want to rehash a lot of the principles that are out there. We don't want to go, yes, you need clean data, yes, you need governance, yes. Assuming all these things, we want to look at leveraging AI as a way to interact or orchestrate between different smart platforms, right? So if you're coming up with questions, we obviously have a very experienced panel here, very diverse, and that's not accidental. We've got research, we've got analytics platforms people, we have solutions people that are up here. And so I'm going to put some questions to them on that, but for questions from the audience, we're focused on kind of that orchestration and integration of different platforms. Okay, so putting it out to the panel. Any one of you can jump on it. We'll see who wins the book. Whoever goes first gets 2 of Andres' books. So,
Man, I'm going to need extra weight for my luggage then.
I'm not. So So let's talk a bit about the benefits and technologies that are out there. I mean, so if you're a smart city, there's debates around what does that mean, what is good, what isn't. What are the advantages of having different types of smart platforms and then bringing those together? What are the benefits of doing that, and what are some maybe existing technologies or use cases that you're aware of that you've seen that?
So I'll give an example we're working on right now. In fact, I had a call on it for brainstorming on this last week. Some of you might have heard that there were wildfires in California. Well, with that, the California Public Utilities Commission has put out about a dozen metrics to report on risks that utilities have around wildfires. And our idea is we already know what, and a lot of these metrics are what faults are you having during high fire risk times. So if there's a fire risk index, that's what takes machine learning. That's what takes the intelligence to determine what wind factors, what vegetation, what dry fuel, live fuel you have. Basically a lot of factors that I don't know much about because I'm not a wildfire person, and that's what we're applying machine learning to. The integration we have is that we already have model-based systems for knowing the state of the electric grid and faults that are happening at that time. So it's that aspect of it is a pretty easy integration there. So it's a new application. It's wildfires that, like I said before this, we didn't deal with from Siemens' point of view, and now we're already putting it together, and it's quite quick. We have most of the components already there, and the integration is the important part.
Great, thanks. Some other examples of benefits of being able to bring together multiple smart platforms.
So I'll just add a couple of quick comments. I think it was Dan Smith that said earlier that you had to integrate 24 or 42 different points of integration, something like that. It was a number, and it was 2 digits.
Over 20 applications. For something that's a fairly contained thing, and I think what's interesting to me is whether you want to call it smart cities or smart infrastructure or start trying to get data from a lot of different places. It's the kind of thing you hear people talk about, but it's really, really difficult to do. And I'll give you just a very simple example. We have two solar farms at SAS. 2008, the first one was the largest one in the Southeast. It was a megawatt. That was only 11 years ago. And it took us a while to wrest the data away from the company that was running our solar farm. And then we have a couple smart buildings, and it took us a while, again, to wrestle, whatever you want to call it, tussle, that data away from the building management companies. And over the past couple of years, we've developed a vision of a smart campus. It's pretty easy to do. And now all of a sudden we're talking about, well, maybe we should convince Dr. Goodnight to get some batteries, and let's make a microgrid. But even within a 15,000 person company in a contained campus, we will struggle just getting the data, some of which we already own, and build a business case that we can take to Dr. Goodnight, who will make a decision based on dollars and cents. He's not going to make it because he's trying to make a statement. So it's a great practical application of very small scale, not a whole lot of data, but from a lot of different sources, and just how difficult it is when you get right down to it.
What would y'all say as far as, I mean, you had mentioned Hadoop earlier, but maybe for this side of the table quick, what are some of the technologies that you're using or that you see being utilized to help accelerate these kinds of interconnections, integrations?
So on the data organization side, the wrong person from my company is sitting there. I'd have to get somebody else. But from a collection side, it was already mentioned earlier today, the lowly Raspberry Pi or BeagleBone Black. You can even throw Arduino in there, right? The availability of inexpensive, high quality edge computing resources has effectively enabled what we do. We're a little bit like, Oprah, you get a Raspberry Pi, and you get a Raspberry Pi, and you get 4. We deploy those edge computing devices like candy. We have participants with literally 4 or 5 of them in their house. Now, we put them in a custom enclosure, and then we call them a branded something, right? So they don't necessarily know what they're getting. But being able to talk to those, because for all the talk about standardization and things like that, we are the residential partner for Austin Energy on Shines, for talking to edge devices, for all the talk of standardization. I have one brand of smart inverter. I have a different brand of smart inverter that has energy storage. If I want to do the exact same thing with those 2 smart inverters in terms of set power factor, it's a completely different command set, right? And they are both nominally SunSpec compliant. Evil words, vendor extensions, okay? So these are the kinds of things that we see as in terms of really enabling that edge processing.
Yeah, I was the one that set the BeagleBone, actually. We actually customize BeagleBones for hardware level. On the software side, we thought we were not going to get into clean data, but there's pretty much no clean data in the building space until you clean it yourself. And in order to speed that up, we use Project Haystack pretty much extensively in all around. And on the machine learning, that is our topic, we are using Smile library from GitHub, which is a Java-based library. And we're also looking for TensorFlow, which is Google's open source initiative for AI.
I'll just add to that briefly. Part of this depends on the level of timing that you need. So the level of coordination can mean completely different. We've heard timescales of minutes and seconds. If you're talking about protection, it's a completely different game, and the analytics have to be in the device itself. So part of it is putting I call it distributable computation, and making the right decisions at the right place at the right time. And one size doesn't fit all. So in some cases, BeagleBone and these things work perfectly fine, but they're not real-time and deterministic. But for doing the level of coordination we need, it's perfect. And so understanding that and understanding the data exchange and the provenance there is a key piece of that. So part of that is understanding what you need to do. On the critical side of things, we've done some kind of exploratory work on some extensions to time enclosure. We actually demonstrated this 3 years ago on the stage here at NI Week, where we used TSN, time-sensitive networking, to phase lock inverters in a very low inertia system and have shared goals so they could maintain stability even when the voltage dropped, even when other things happened. They could lock together and maintain a stability and then come back when other things came up. So that was a level of coordination provided by the level of technology. And so the ability to understand that and to put the computation where you need it, when you need it, to learn at one level and then put the intelligence at the edge is going to be vital to move these things out, because we can't close the loop fast enough to control the things that we're talking about controlling at the time scale that we might need. So it's looking at those things. How is it possible? How do you extend it is key to the things that we're doing. And so to your point, intelligence, can you put that at the edge and send information? And it's the appropriate level of information flow up and down or in and out so that you can understand and have intent and maintain a level of assurance that the other assets that you're working with will do what they say they'll do to maintain stability.
So as far as challenges, so we talked about some of the collection challenges and the data challenges. Beyond that, what are some of the challenges in regards to working with the different platforms, or what are some challenges that get in the way of adoption and implementation?
So I would really, I have a fantastic PowerPoint I'd like to recommend to you. It's by a guy at Forrester named Dr. Kel Carson. I met him a couple months ago. He doesn't cover energy, but he wrote a really nice paper. And I think it's, if you search on it, I think it's called augmented intelligence. If you do augmented intelligence, Forrester, you'll probably get it. But he says that they did I think this was a Forrester survey of the issues that were holding back the adoption, the value out of AI. And the first one broadly is they don't know what it's going to do. They don't know what the business case is going to be. There's obviously a lot of hype in the market, but that was problem number one, is they don't know what to do. And number two is they don't know how to do it. I don't think you can find a bigger obstacle if you put those two things together.
Just one thing with that, part of it is availability of people that know how to do it and the tools. Pretty soon, I mean, open source is key, and you can pull a ton of different machine learning libraries and you can try them and throw them at it, but it's challenging without knowing the context and the problem set. So part of this is that you really need to pull together a cross-functional team that's looking at this, and you need to address a problem that you can go after and get feedback on that problem and iterate on the solution as you do it. You can't be big rollout kind of concept. So I think that's one of the challenges, is bringing the team and the people and the knowledge and the flow. We're talking about infrastructure. If we can get as close to a ResOp or a DevOps environment, so our researchers and our ML people are working on the same data sets and sort of infrastructure that we want to test on, our learning will be will be faster and more relevant to the places we need to go. But that's cross-functional. It's integrated skill sets. It's breaking down silos, and that gets to culture and availability of tools. But pretty soon, the approaches and the algorithms are going to be commonplace, and hopefully we'll have a community of a library that we can share. So as your company learns, it'll share with another, with another, with another. And then the differentiator comes to data, because you've learned how to do that, and then the context to do it. And then the other side of that is even more valuable, is the business model for the use cases and the value propositions that are involved in that to monetize it.
So real quick, before we jump to questions, just in my experience, a lot of the challenges that you can run into is data accessibility. A lot of my background comes from the API space. Not every platform, not every legacy system in a municipality, et cetera, will have APIs or easy accessibility to the data. And they're not always willing to work in the cloud or with, there's rules around where certain data or what they're willing to do. So trying to show those benefits or trying to have workarounds to how you get that data, those are some challenges that need to be considered. So let's go for questions. Andres?
So I don't have a mic, so hopefully you can grab it right here. So this is a quick question. There's a bit of a softball, but everybody is saying, okay, AI, ML, I get it. I'm going to get my own data scientist in-house. I'm going to build my own data lake. So explain to us what is the threshold for that? How big do I have to be an impact versus really leveraging in the cloud companies like yours and partnering? Because it sounds to me like a lot of people are enamored that, yeah, I get it, but I want to build my own thing. And every time I hear that, knowing what I know about IT and architecture, it's just like, that's a bad idea. You need to partner with somebody who is a lot bigger and understands how to do this. Am I wrong? Am I right? What's the wisdom?
I'll take it. I think data lake could easily turn into a data swamp if you're not careful, and it could be really hard to come up with any analytics out of it. So from the perspective of data being generated, I think a distributed approach will be much better, where the data is created. We should roll those up in a clustered manner, in a replicated manner to the cloud, and that will help us. I think another three-word soup for you, ETL, extract, transform, load, whatever platform that you're using, it does take a lot of time, 60 to 70%, before you even do any analytics. So having clean data again by changing the architecture will solve that problem, I think.
I totally agree. We've had, I can't tell you how many times we've had relatively large and even gigantic commercial partners who you would suspect would be able to handle the sort of volumes of data, and we give them, I mean, we have a huge portion of our data that's available for free. This is the nonprofit part of it, right, for researchers worldwide at universities, but then we also have commercial data access. And they come to us and we say, all right, well, the data access is this, and then consulting to handle this data is this. And they say, no, we're not going to need that. We turn the spigots on, and 2 weeks later we get the phone call. Is that rate still valid? I am too nice. We don't jack up the price. We say yes, that rate's still available, and then we usually have to spend 3 to 4 weeks sort of explaining to them this world that we just opened up to them.
So, oops, go for it, Tim.
I was just going to add a point about the skills. I mean, I think it's a couple things. One, it's about education, and I'm just totally. I just love the technology enhanced infrastructure handout that we got earlier, and I think that's really going to be a key is education in producing, the trained data scientists who have knowledge across an industry. I think it's also about ecosystems. We participate in a lot of ecosystems. I was delighted in April when SAS announced that we were joining up with Siemens and MindSphere to put AI in IoT applications in manufacturing. And so now that we've met, we're going to drive that in energy. We've got a small partner in North Carolina called Building Clarity that spun out of a building management company, and they've actually got an on-demand model, so they can go to a city that may not, they have the data, but they don't have the expertise, they don't have the data scientists, and they can do basically a solutions on demand or answers on demand. So I think there are a lot of issues. It's not just about data, obviously, but it's about the people who can do it. And back to Scott's point, you've got to have people who understand the industry and the context, and they don't just run a model and give you the result and say you don't take showers or flush. I'm going to tell that story a lot, by the way, because I just love it.
You should have seen the look on their faces, too.
I think
Beautiful report, just roll.
we'll get one more question just real quick. I
I
think
just want to add one thing on that, if that's all right. I agree, data swamp, absolutely. That's the biggest thing. So just 2 quick things that I'll add on. One, your data is never as clean and never as good as you expect it to be. We've had clients that have said, "Oh yeah, we have our asset age," and then when you get to it, they don't, or we have it for 20% of it. Well, okay, great. We're going to have to switch machine learning methodology because of that, and we do it, and that's fine. But it's never as clean. So spend your time on that. Don't worry about data lakes. That you've got a lot of platforms out there. They can do that in our T-shirt size, so you don't have to worry about it. Second thing is, data scientists are very hard to come by. They're incredibly hard to come by because, and I'll tell you who steals them. All the big Silicon Valley companies or Seattle, Northeast are coming. Google, Netflix, Amazon, they're good at determining your buying habits, your viewing habits, because they pay very well their data scientists, and they scoop them out right out of school and they train them. So we have to do the same thing, and it's a hot market. For any student out there right now, it's like adding Bitcoin like 5 years ago. Add data scientists to your studies and it'll help. You're going to add it to your professorship? What's that?
Yeah, we don't have another 8 hours to discuss that. So, all right, there's one more. Here's another question. That gentleman right there.
So a lot of interest in how the data come in, but what about the output? Because in my experience, most business users who are used to very deterministic outcome from enterprise application are shocked when they invest in AI. It's like it tells me probability.
So the question is, we've talked a lot about the inputs, but how do you set expectations that the outcomes might be more directional, right, as part of the learning curve, if I'm hearing that right?
Quick answer.
Quick answer. So that's what you have to set expectations with at the beginning, and it changes again based on the inputs. But what we do is we usually work on grades, and grades, have a range, so people relate back to their earlier school days, then they understand that they're within a range. So quick enough, I think.
All right, one more quick question. Way in the back.
I have a question on operationalizing AI and ML models for scale. So right now, a lot of the times when we implement AI, we get stuck in proof of concept kind of territory. And what are some of the challenges kind of operationalizing real-time streaming data with AI models at scale? So we're going to talk about some.
Repeat the question.
So the question is, how do you operationalize AI at scale?
So I'll take a shot at that, and it's really about part of an analytics life cycle. What everyone likes to talk about is discovery, and they like to talk about algorithms. What they don't like to talk about is data management, which we've already covered. And they don't like to talk about deployment and management and modeling. A couple of years ago, we had a very large U.S. utility, and one of their senior VPs said, we have 5,000 analytic models at our company. We don't know who owns each one of those, how old they are, what's their lineage, what's their performance, and I think that's really the adult discussion when it comes to things like this, is build all the models you want, but you've got to be able to manage them and deploy them, and you've got to be able to do it at scale, and that's a very important question.
I would add real fast, for us it is verification, validation, and trust, that those things that we're asking those devices to do is the right thing to do, and that they're actually doing it, because especially in our case, we're aggregating residential energy storage. So I have energy storage systems on the side of occupied houses. Now, I wouldn't do that if I wasn't comfortable with the edge analytics that we've put in place for safety and security of those things. My own house is one of those houses, right? So, so that to us is sort of where it really becomes the limiting factor of when you can establish it and you're comfortable with the potential risks involved and you've minimized them to all practical extent. That's when you can deploy it. And where we see that as an issue is, again, going back to that standardizations, where I have a really tough time getting the information out of or being sure that the battery system or whatever it is that I've just told to go do X has actually done X in the right way. I'm not going to put it out there.
Okay, we are out of time, so thank our panelists. Good job, everybody.
Don't leave, I got a print out for you.